Cool. Okay, well, let's move on to Daughters of the Dust.
Yeah, so...
Or Daughter of the Dust. I keep wanting to pluralize
Daughters. It's Daughters of the Dust.
It is pluralized. Okay,
It's
I keep wanting
pluralized.
to do the right thing and I'm thinking I'm doing it wrong. That's very typical of me.
It is. So Daughters, why don't you do this one?
I mean, it's a hard one. It takes place on one of the Gullah Islands, and the Gullah Islands are kind of, they're unique, I guess is what I want to say.
They're in, it's coastal South Carolina, says Google in the top part. Former West African slaves who adopted many of their ancestors' Yoruba traditions.
Right. So, I mean, speaking really broadly, and as though I know what I'm talking about, the way their society is set up, they actually have stronger ties to their origins than people more on the mainland, where they were slaves and they were, just forcibly removed from their past and moved further away and sold and so on. I believe the Gullah Islands, there was there's certainly a legacy of slavery there.
There's a legacy of slavery, but there's weirdly less assimilation, it seems like. At least that's the suggestion that I know from culture.
Right. And so this takes place in the 19-teens, and there's a family there, a big family, and they're considering moving to the mainland. And who's moving to the mainland? And in moving to the mainland, they will be assimilated more. They will have to deal with more racism, but there's also more opportunity there. And some of the family members are done with their heritage and want assimilation, essentially. They want opportunities and to live like Black people in the mainland area are, and some of them don't want that. And you also have two women who've been living in the mainlands and have very different life. One of them, I believe, was a sex worker. She brings a young woman who appears to be her lover with her. Has a history of sexual violence against her. And the other one is a devout Christian who comes with a photographer friend that she brings. And that's kind of it. It's just a lot of them arguing about it, and it's a lot of talking about what the family's been through and what their heritage is and what it means and who's going and why are they going, and family dynamics as, there's and who's died and who's here and what happened. And there's some, it's beautiful. I think it is my kind. Theo appreciates its beauty, but I'm not as much of a sucker for a beautiful film. And this looks like a painting most of the time. I love the colors.
It reminds me of the draftsman's contract, where it's basically every frame is like a painting.
Yeah.
Which is also a YouTube channel. That's good. But anyways, whatever. And
I also like there is a whole. I mean, you watched Down in the Delta recently, which had the whole thing about Nathan. That's Maya Angelou's film that is about a Black woman who moves from New York back to kind of the South. Yeah. And there's a whole legend in the family about Nathan, which
is a candlestick.
Turns out because their great or whatever was sold for a candlestick. Not a candelabra, not
candelabra, yeah.
But it reminds me of that, in that they have this whole legend about how this, and again, spoilers. They have a whole legend about like the slaves walking on water and but then later you find out like the real story is they just drowned, and so it has this interesting kind of fact versus fiction thing going on that I think is interesting too.
It's very low. It's not no narrative. It's not experimental, but it is really low. It's for a film. It's kind of as low narrative as you can be for a film that still has a narrative. Mm-hmm. It's not really plot driven. There is a plot to it as well, but again, it's almost as low as you can be while still having a plot and a narrative. Mm-hmm. And as it's noteworthy, I wanted to make sure we included. It's noteworthy because Julie Dash directed it. She's a Black woman, and I think it's the first
theatrically released film directed by an African-American woman in the United States, because we've talked about Higher Ground, which is earlier. Losing Ground. Sorry, Higher Ground is a different movie. Losing Ground, which was directed by Kathleen Collins,
Yeah.
who was also a Black woman, but that I think just went on festivals. That was never theatrically
Yeah, it was
released.
never
It's really
theatrically
good.
It's
People
a few
should
years
watch it.
before Daughters of the Dust. It's like 80 something, right? Or,
It's 84.
Hmm.
82.
Oh, wow.
And Julie Dash, luckily, unlike Kathleen Collins and also the guy who directed Cane River, which I really want you to watch, because it has a similarity with Daughters of the Dust in that it's a very specific group of Black people, because there's that habit of just like monolithicizing groups of people. And so I like that about Cane River. But anyway, unlike those two people, Julie Dash is still living, and she lived.
Well,
and she worked. Our mother. She went into television because no one would fund her movies, because that's how that works. So.
Which is lame, and there's a lot there. Our mother is a member of the DGA, Directors Guild of America, because she worked as a associate director
in television,
in public broadcasting. So we're not really Hollywood royalty or anything. But they always do. DJ is always doing stuff, different events and whatnot. And now they're all Zoom. So Mom, who wouldn't normally attend because she doesn't live in LA anymore, has been going to them. And there was one with like Patty Jenkins and and other people, but there was also Ron Howard. There was one with Julie Dash, and Mom said that she really liked listening to Julie Dash. And I would be so curious I'm sure she's been interviewed. I should probably go listen to her. But like between her and Cheryl Dunye and like just all this stuff, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, these women should have gotten money to do something. They should have gotten it isn't a thing where like Daughters of the Dust doesn't mean you're suddenly super famous. No, it's an indie movie that most it's that thing where it's like people think culture is monolithic. So like all Black people would like Daughters of the Dust. No, Black people would be bored out of their minds. It's a contemplative, non-narrative film about a small area. Like.
But lots of white men have made white films like that and gone on to have bigger careers and been funded.
She would have gotten another independent movie funded, maybe. I mean, who knows? Everybody has a different route. So maybe she wanted to make big budget movies. Who knows? But she should have gone on to do something.
Well, that's like that Marvel pipeline where it's like these indie male directors get chances to direct. And there have been a lot of history of indie directors who work in big commercial things, and it's usually again men. Like John Sayles come to mind immediately, where they write scripts or direct something big and expensive, and then they use that to fund their smaller.
Anyways, we've gone off topic from the film. Going back to the film, it is your kind of beautiful in that everything's a painting. I tend to love cinematography and camera movement and lighting in a way that I don't. I mean, you like it when things have shadows, but it's in general. I notice when movies are doing things more than you are in terms of what it's doing with, and sometimes even with color and saturation and like that. I'm trying to get better about that, but it's hard being colorblind and just all that. And I'm trying to be better about noticing what films do with music and stuff. But like Daughters of the Dust isn't doing as much with its cinematography. It's not doing as much with its but it is doing a lot with composition, and it's a lot more focused on like mise en scène is what we would use.
And like the colors, colors are amazing. There's beautiful reds, there's beautiful yellows, and a lot of it looks like an impressionist painting to me, and like where people will be standing, and
there's a lot there, and I thought it was really neat how it did all that. I didn't like it as much, I think, as you did. Maybe I think I got the non-narrative. I occasionally have trouble with non-narrative, and I just get lost and kind of like, I don't really know what I'm paying attention to. By the end of the movie, I liked it, but I was a little bit like, oh, I kind of see what we're doing, and we're exploring these different aspects. And by the end of the movie, some people stay, some people leave. It's a movie that's, this is a movie that's less interested in a strong opinion of like, this is the right thing to do. It's more like its strong opinion is that there are multiple answers to the problem.
Right.
And I like movies that do that. But
it's interesting though. Oh, sorry.
I just, some of the music cues in it annoyed me because like there was a lot of really good music, but then there'd be these kind of weird moments where the music felt a little overbearing, and it's like, you were doing really good music, and now this movie feels like it really wants to make me feel an emotion. But yeah, that was my last statement.
Well, it's interesting because we were just earlier talking about low budget Western, and I have trouble with those, and I had trouble with First Cow because it's just so much like quiet moments where I enjoy quiet moments, but they're not great for building a relationship between two characters. I wish I'd said that better. And when we were talking about that, but by contrast, like Daughters of the Dust is like endless conversations, deep conversations.
There's so much stuff happening.
Like I almost wish First Cow had that kind of like more of that kind of a thing. And so that's why I like something like Daughters of the Dust, where they're talking about the same thing over and over again, which can get frustrating, and making food that looks so good on the beach. I'm a little hungry right now.
Me too.
But it's interesting, and they get to different places, and there's different stuff.
There might have been a little too much repetition. There was just a little too much focus on like someone sleeping with someone, and I mean, there's some hard stuff in there about rape, but it gets covered several times, and it's a little bit like, I don't know that we needed to keep going over this the way it does, but it's
but
not
you still liked it.
Oh, it's still a really good movie, and it's really interesting, and it's the kind of thing where it's like more people who like cinema should see this movie. I did have one.
I wish they did re-release it a couple years ago when it was an anniversary, and I wish I'd seen it in the theater.
Me too.
If they ever do again.
If movie theaters ever open again, and if I ever feel safe going to one, I would love to see this movie in a movie theater. Yeah. I have one final parting thought or comment, which is I was listening to a podcast. I haven't listened to things as much lately, and the name is escaping me. But it was basically about how subtitles are racist, or can be, because if they don't, often they either.
Yeah, I can't imagine it was all subtitles are racist, but
no, but it was about how like when subtitles there are two black men, one black man, one black person. I think they don't identify. I think they're non-binary. Anyways, but it was just about how like when you change the language of what the person is saying, like you either dumb it down or smarten it up, and either way it's wrong. Like it should just be what the person is saying. And you and I have watched things with subtitles our whole lives because hearing problems and whatnot. And
I've caught bad subtitles before too with Spanish, and my Spanish and my Japanese are not great, but they've been good enough that in places I'm like, and we've also seen terrible dubbing, like Spirited Away, like.
I just not into some dubbing. I get why people watch.
Add stuff. They just are like, well, they won't get it. So here she's going to state what's happening. And it's like, what are you doing?
I get it that you like are supposed to pay attention to the image and not to the text. But if you just put in a little effort, you can do both at the same time. Anyways, but when you watch something in English and you watch the translation, like it's not like it's always kind to white people or something, white male majority, or anything. But like watching the subtitles for Daughters of the Dust.
Oh, you said that was really bad.
It was so bad. Like they changed, like they were changing what the characters were saying, and it's not in a foreign language.
No, it's in a Gullah dialect, and Gullah is English, but it's very accented. It's very
the words are different. I mean, it's like anything. Go to New York or the Bronx or something or whatever. Like it's just a different accent. It's a different. I mean, I get it that some people might have trouble hearing it. I have hearing problems. I didn't always get it. But I was looking at the subtitles, and I'm like, that's not what she said.
Right.
Like and they also started they did things like contemplative tribal music, or happy tribal music, or sad tribal music. And I'm like, is it tribal? It's
like
percussion.
What tribe?
It's like, what tribe? It's percussion music or whatever. Like, it's not, you don't need to call it tribal music.
Yeah.
Because they're black people. Jesus, it was... Yeah. Sorry, my girlfriend's looking at me. I'm getting a little too... It bothered me. It apparently bothered me more than I realized.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My cat has just broken back into the house. I decided just to let her, because our screen's getting replaced. So that, if you're wondering why I've not been paying full attention and been smiling, it's because I've been watching my cat break through the screen door and get in the house.
You're good. Anyways, that was my final note.
I completely agree, and I'd be curious to listen to that, because, there was a book recently, The Vegetarian, I think it was called, and there was a little bit of controversy. I think it either won or was nominated for like the Man Booker, but it is originally a Korean novel, and supposedly the translation literally makes it a different book. Like,
you've mentioned this.
So I do, and I've been watching a lot of Korean stuff lately, and it's interesting when I'll see critiques of these things where it's like it's poorly written, and to a certain degree, I've seen some where it's like, by poorly written they mean like we need conflict, so a stalker shows up. Like that is you don't need to speak the language to feel like, well, that's what they do with these kind of stories. It's very soap opera kind of stuff. Yeah. But like, some of the dialogue is like, I'm sure this translation, I'm losing things and so on.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, it's even more offensive when it's actually just a very
poorly done English translation.
Yeah.
People speaking English.
I still think you might want to write Criterion just to say, hey guys, I think this should be resubtitled to something better.
Yeah, I might. You're right. Maybe I should do that. Anyways, but Daughters of the Dust is a really interesting movie.
It's a great movie. I would love to see it.
I don't usually rate things, but the subtitles get an F.
Yeah.